Hi, and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know. You guys, every day, I try to tell the truth, try to be honest. I try to just be really real about the way I go through my day. One could say, I'm keeping it 100. That's such a bad point. That's bad.
No,
I guess you could
that's
say
pretty
that.
good.
That is-
Keeping it 100.
Yeah.
You guys, it's the 100th episode. This is a huge milestone for us.
Yeah.
I can't believe when we started out with just me and you, Graham, and a little tiny microphone with our cheeks pressed against each other so we could, don't you remember that? So the microphone could hear both of us?
Yeah, we
Okay.
were sharing a chair.
Really?
We shared it, yeah.
He's painting a whole
sat
different picture.
in my lap
Okay,
and
good.
we...
I was going to say, this escalated in a very strange way. Good, okay.
But I never thought
Sitting in a windowless
100.
portable at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it had a small window.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the cockroaches needed some sunlight.
Wonderful. Good.
I never thought we would go this far, right? When we started, I thought we'd have my mom listening and a student and...
Started from the bottom.
Is your
Now-
mom still
now we're
listening?
here.
Are you trying to say your mom isn't listening anymore?
Oh, she definitely listens,
Okay,
but she's not the only listener, I think, unless she is listening a lot.
A lot.
And
on a lot of different devices.
on a lot of different devices. She's just really wants me to feel good about myself.
Does this episode really count as number 100 if not all three of us were on those first 10? I mean, really, this is episode 90.
Yeah, no, this is like the technical episode 100,
Okay.
but it's not the spiritual episode 100.
yes,
the
good.
spiritual episode 100 is going to be episode 110
10, I guess.
or 12 or whenever Magby joined, because that was when like, you know, the medley,
Stars aligned and
the melody to our harmony. I don't know. That's
What?
when like.
You mean it's when our episodes went from 20 minutes to an hour long?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, wonderful.
No, when that missing piece came, when a little window in our heart opened, we didn't know it was there.
actually kinda-
all
And
the
Magby
little
joined the
tumblers
podcast.
fell into place.
That's right, and the lock opened
And the lock opened.
to a secret
To what?
garden.
Yeah, seriously. And what is happening? And are we in that secret garden now?
We've
Is that-
been
you
in the
keep your
secret
gardens
garden.
in a vault?
We've been
Yeah.
in the secret garden, gentlemen.
What a treat.
So let's.
I refuse your
Plan.
distinction and
Yeah.
choose to still be excited about number 100.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Good
I
for
have
you.
to. Fwah.
Fwah. I'm pumped, but yeah. Anyway,
we are.
welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know. This is our 100th episode. My name is AJ Hannenberg. I'm here with two of my best colleagues, Graham Donaldson
Hello.
and Thomas Magby.
Hey.
And we are here to bring the classical world to you in a way that is palatable and fun and hopefully interesting, and I'm sure sometimes boring. And but
Wait, what?
but we try. We're trying really hard over here
Yep.
to make it fun for you.
This is how we introduce episode 100. Sometimes we're boring.
Can't make an omelet without
Breaking a few.
boring a few
Nope.
holes.
Still, nope. I don't-
You don't bore your omelets?
No, apparently not. You mean like drill a hole into my egg
yeah.
to then pour it out?
Yeah, that's what we mean by boring.
Yeah, naturally.
Anyway,
The podcast like bore into your mind.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Sorry. I took that the wrong way.
yeah, there you go. Anyway, welcome, and today we're going to hear from Thomas.
Hey, that's gonna be
Speaking about boring, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah, thank you. Just to be clear, I was like, I don't think this should be episode 100, but anyway.
I like the Enneagram. I think it's interesting, but I want to keep the peace because I'm a number 9.
so interesting. Anyway,
I'm not allowed to do that, right? Number myself.
you're allowed to number yourself.
Oh.
Actually, I'm not supposed to number you, so I'm wronging you every time I tell you that you're wrong about your type. I think more importantly, Graham, can you teach me how to make that noise? What's the excited noise you make at the beginning of
Fwah, fwah, fwah.
Fwah, fwah. Is that how fwah,
Fwah.
fwah?
Yeah.
Fwah?
Fwah. So
Fwah.
FWAAAH.
Or if
Oh,
we're,
there's a huh.
Fwah, 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 fwah.
if we're going to take your pronunciation from last podcast, if that's the way it's spelled, it's fwee, 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 fwee.
It's all E's and it's pronounced A's.
That's still the best. Okay. So yes, today I'm going to be talking
Podcast is a living nightmare.
nightmare.
Near.
Nightmare. Okay. That's the best. Okay. So we will be talking about the Enneagram today. AJ's episode last time, my episode this time, Graham's episode next time are taken from our Paideia conference in Austin, Texas every August. So thank you. We had a listener show up, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that was cool.
Wasn't that
really-
Yeah. Listener who lives in Austin, Texas,
Yep.
who came to the conference and told us that you came because of us.
What was
That's
her
awesome.
name? Carly?
No.
Callie?
did she sign a release to allow us to even?
No, she didn't.
Yeah.
So mysterious listener
top
whose name
secret,
we can't
yeah.
remember. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And so, yeah, every August we have that conference. So if listener, you are interested, I don't know when you're going to be listening to this, but if you're listening to this in August, you should reach out about coming to Paideia. So All of our topics, again, for these 3 weeks are adaptations of talks we gave at that camping conference. So the topic that, the title for the topic I gave was the Enneagram and Paideia. So I forget the exact quote, but however many episodes ago when AJ read from The Praise of Folly and said that the job of pretentious people is to take, 2 or 3 old words and expound on them for an hour is, again, what I'll be doing this episode. I think that is the majority of my episodes. So.
If they are 100-episode listeners to classical stuff, then they must enjoy that.
Yeah, seriously. They stuck around for any length of time. Yeah. So you're in the same boat as me.
And if they're newbies, it's
I'm so
already
sorry.
off.
Yeah,
Like
seriously.
they're shutting it down.
Leave us a 3-star review saying that we are awkward funny, not funny.
Oh, and if you've listened to all 100 episodes, you were part of the Centenary Club, and
Wow.
leave us a review saying
there-
you're part of the Centenary Club.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that
I
all
get to
that,
know you guys?
all that it gets you for listening to 100 episodes is getting to leave us
Maybe
a
we
review?
can. There's something else we can figure out. Cook up. I don't know.
We're going to cook something for them?
You can send us an email. That'd be cool. I'd like to hear
That would
from
be
people
cool.
who are 100 episode
Stuck around for all
listeners.
100. Yeah.
That's fun.
Classical stuff at veritasacademy.net. Okay. So my topic is Paideia and the Enneagram. Enneagram and Paideia. I don't remember the order. So we'll be talking about those 2 things today. So we have 2 big words to define. Let's start with Paideia. So gentlemen, we have a conference that is called the Paideia Conference. It is a word we throw around quite a bit. What is Paideia?
Raising the man, the whole man, in virtue and wisdom.
Disciplined crafting, but
Oh, sorry. The disciplined crafting of the whole man in wisdom and virtue. Something like that.
what does that mean?
That's the definition that we say a lot that has now been haphazardly memorized by me, apparently. Yeah.
Well done.
But it's essentially the civilizing of
Yes.
child to adult to be not just a functioning member of society, but has the vision and the goal of the ideal member of the polis.
Yes.
And so that's everything from informational education to character formation to having them love what is lovable and hate what is hate-worthy, and with the goal of introducing somebody that can both serve and be served by the community.
It's good.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Paideia?
Yeah. No.
Go.
I mean, it's
Awesome.
just I feel like sometimes we overwork the definition. I think Paideia probably just was very much like the word education to the Greeks.
Ooh, this is good. So we read lots into it because it's an old word.
We read lots into it because we need to redeem the concept of education. Because
Yeah.
education,
Yes.
in a modern sense, does not have any of that character formation. It has just give you the facts that you need in order to function in the market.
Sure, but I'm just saying I don't think we need to be so careful about the definition because it's like it's an education but add a virtue component and make it more about citizenry.
Yeah. It makes me think that we could probably improve all of our
Citizenship.
episodes by just translating whatever our core topic is into like German or something, and then we can be like, oh, well, what's the definition of this thing in German? When really it's just we use Google Translate to get it. Like it makes it sound way more profound because it's in a different language. That's good. So I think civilizing is a really good word, Graham. So thank you for that. So what is Paideia? Paideia is, yes, the growing up, but it's also there are distinctives to growing up in a specific time, place, and being a specific type of person. So what is Paideia? Paideia is growing someone up into what it means to be. We're in Austin, Texas in 2019, in South Austin. Like, what does it mean to be an active member of that society, to be a member of Austin in 2019? If they were to move to Paris, Paideia would be different in Paris. What it is to be an ideal Parisian is different than what it is to be an ideal Austonian, whatever.
Got to tuck your polo shirt into your jeans.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Austin.
Which is a part of our dress code. That's right. But if they were to go and take that outfit anywhere else, they would look kind of silly.
Yes.
Right. So, Paideia is unique to a specific culture. So, ideal members of your polis will look different based on where you are. There are certain things that we would say are common across cultures. So, AJ's last episode talking about the virtues, we would say that at least 4 of those virtues, the classical virtues, we kind of agree on. We might use different words for them, but those are generally agreeable. For those who are Christian, we'd say that there are 3 more religious virtues, and those are kind of common across people. Part of what it is to be human is to value those things. Can y'all hear y'all hear the test over the mic right now? What a fun day to.
Was that a
dog.
barking dog?
That's what I thought.
Kind of what it sounded like. Didn't it sound like test also?
Yeah, but it's a talented
talking dog.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could hear that, listeners. They've been testing our PA system all day, so you may have just heard a barking dog or a man saying test. We're not really sure.
part of what I'm liking about this is this harkens back to the first 10 episodes when like the receptionist would like walk in
full circle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
When Tony
this is
would
kind of like an
come in.
homage to early episodes. So
Just keeping it as
Yeah.
professional as
No
possible
matter-
on episode 100.
no matter how far we run, there we are. So okay, so yeah, Paideia is education has a anyway. That was very
Is that it? Is that? Did you just cook up that phrase?
No,
That's from Alice in Wonderland.
There it is, yeah. So Paideia is this growth, this education with a moral component to it, but also a cultural component. So someone during the Paideia conference referenced enculturation. I think that's a helpful way of thinking about that word. Okay. That's one big word that will... So, and the other side of that on Paideia is that there are certain objective things that to grow up... I'm focused mostly on a child growing up into an adult, but even as adults, we're not done developing. Graham said this years ago at this point, and it's always stuck with me. It was right after I started at Veritas. He said that we never leave the school of rhetoric. That a student is brought in ninth grade, but they don't graduate out of it. They remain in that school, that advanced school of using grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So we remain in that same stage also. Okay, so we also are being developed. We're also growing in Paideia. Okay, cool. So there are objective things that are right that relate to Paideia. Those would be the virtues. Virtues are right. To not do a virtue is a wrong thing. You should not do that. We'll get to why I'm belaboring this in a second. Okay. So our second big word is Enneagram. Gentlemen, what is the Enneagram?
It's a wacky shape.
It is a wacky shape indeed.
That's what I was gonna say too. Cool shapes.
And it's like this this apothecary alchemist symbol.
Wait, what?
That I don't know.
Kind of. That
Each
means-
type corresponds to one of the spheres, right?
Wait, this escalated quickly. One of the spheres. We're talking about planets right now?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, this is cool. I hope so. I guess. How many planets are there?
9.
Good talk. Okay, yeah. I mean, if there are, then yes.
Pluto?
Are you including Pluto on that? That's what someone
Yeah,
is like
I was including
yelling
Pluto.
at their radio right now. So sorry about that. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah. So Enneagram is a term you've probably heard thrown around a lot. We talked about it during our January 1 New Year's episode. So the Enneagram, the title, the name Enneagram, literally just means like 9 shape. So the name is a reference to a 9-pointed shape, Enneagram. Those 9 points correspond to 9 different personality types, and there are some just, I guess, tendencies or things that are common. That order matters, and we'll get into what that order means.
But Thomas, I thought you hated personality tests.
Oh, sure, thanks. So the talk at Paideia this year was in many ways a continuation of what ended up being that January New Year's episode, but then also 2 talks I gave last summer about the weaknesses, the problems of particularly the Myers-Briggs type indicator, MBTI.
That was the mom-daughter team,
That's
right?
the mom-daughter
Yeah.
team that they, the daughter wrote mystery novels and then also developed the most popular personality test in the world, as one does. You can go back and listen to that if you want to. So it was a critique of Myers-Briggs in particular. It was a critique and pushback on the Big Five, which is a more scientifically popular personality test. And this happened a year ago when I gave this talk at the Paideia conference. Someone in the audience, while I'm railing against Myers-Briggs, asked me, well, what do you think about the Enneagram? And I didn't really know much about the Enneagram. And so I shot off this like quick response about, well, you know, the Enneagram comes from the Evagrius and the Desert Fathers. So it's either the best or the worst personality test. Isn't that good? And everyone laughed and then we moved on. And I didn't know anything, but it come to find out, I actually kind of like it. So it's closer to best than it is to worst for me personally. So do I hate personality tests? Yeah. And do they kind of flatten people out? Yeah. But I think there is a flexibility to the Enneagram that's really helpful. Okay.
Or it's more like it's a similar to Hannenberg's last talk where we were just talking about the sins. Like the Enneagram, I know we'll get more into it, has a certain amount of like just profound insight into just human behavior that you don't even need to say, oh, I'm a 3, I'm a 5, I'm a 7. It's just, I know people that act in this way. I even myself sometimes act in this way. And the Enneagram gives a lot of license to say, you are going to act in many different ways over the course of your life. And it tries to provide some kind of structure, but it shies away from an optimization of the structure to say like, let's put a real fine point on this and really nail you down.
Yeah, I think, Graham, you brought this up during the talk that many other personality tests lead us to a false sense of precision where we say, you are INTP, you are high on agreeableness, low on conscientiousness, you are whatever. And even when you use the Big Five, it's called Big Five. There are 5 measures that are a part of the Big Five. You're given a percentage number on each one of those. Again, that's a false level of precision. Have you really boiled down that person to 5 numbers that tell you everything about their personality? And I would say no. I would say people are more complicated than 5 numbers. So what does the Enneagram do? The Enneagram says that there is a tendency of how you act most of the time. Or more specifically, there is a motivation that drives you most of the time, and that determines your core number, 1 through 9. And Graham just said this, but even if you don't like the use of numbers, there are names for each of these different types. Some people will use colors, some people will use animals. It doesn't really matter the number. So I think that's a helpful thing to keep in mind. It's more about these tendencies that are across all of them. I feel like an audio medium is like the worst way to describe this. If you go to enneagraminstitute.com, you can look at the picture, and it makes it a lot easier if you have any interest in this. So there are
otherwise keep listening to this high quality podcast.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I'll give you all the information you need to know for like this topic, but there are some things that looking at a picture will make much easier. So I'll just run through these 9 types again. Hopefully one of them will like make sense to you, and if not, you should go read more about it because it's great. Okay, so again, most of this is from the Enneagram Institute. So anything that sounds really smart comes from them, probably not from me. The 9 types are 1, the reformer, the rational idealistic type, principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic. The 2 is the helper, the caring, interpersonal type, demonstrative, generous, people-pleasing, and possessive. 3 is the achiever, the success-oriented pragmatic type, adaptive, excelling, driven, and image-conscious. 4 is the individualist, the sensitive, withdrawn type, expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental. 5 is the investigator, the intense, cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. 6 is the loyalist, the committed, security-oriented type, engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious. 7 is the enthusiast, the busy, fun-loving type, spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered. 8 is the challenger, the powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. And 9 is the peacemaker, the easygoing, self-effacing type, receptive, reassuring, agreeable, and complacent. So each person has one of those 9 types, and then under conditions of stress, we'll move to a different number, and under conditions of thriving, we'll move to another number. So there's a flexibility in the Enneagram that I find very helpful.
So maybe listeners can write in and tell us what we are and
I'd
give justifications.
I'd be really interested in that.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so that means I need to not name my type, and it was kind of a running joke through my presentation because I kept referencing my type. So anyway, yeah, write in. That'd actually be really interesting for what you all think we are. Okay, so
we're all 7s.
Yeah, okay. So what's the point of all this setup? The point of all this setup is to try and distinguish between things that are objectively true and good, and things that are individual differences. Mm-hmm. That's like my driving motivation for caring about personality exams, personality tests. I remember reading Mortimer Adler's essay on subjectivity in the Syntopicon in the Great Books of the Western World. It really challenged me of a lot of things that I thought were right, and there was only one way to do them, are actually just my individual preferences. It's just me getting frustrated when people see the world differently, want different things out of life. It's just disagreement. It's not necessarily I'm right, they're wrong.
Can you give an example? So like there's the courage of virtue, the courage, the virtue of courage, but there's the I think the best way to go about figuring out where we should eat dinner is
let's do that through the lens of the Enneagram.
Sure.
Yeah. So so those are the 9 different types. I would encourage you to read about them and find one that you identify with. Again, this talk was mostly in the context of talking to parents about relating with their children. And so a thing that was repeated a lot is that parents should not type their children in the same way that I should not type Graham or AJ. They should come up with that themselves. And there were lots of reasons given for that. But it's just, it is unhelpful to tell someone this is who you are, or when Graham tells me he's a 9 and I go, no, you're not. I'm telling him, I know you better than you know yourself, which is a very dumb thing for me to do. So why do I keep doing it? Why do I keep doing that? Okay. It's because I'm a insert the number. No, I don't know. Okay. That's not true. Okay. So, how can we then use this tool, this personality tool, without typing other people? That was the kind of the main project of the talk. Okay. So, things that are involved in the Enneagram that don't require you to necessarily know the other person's type are, first off, the 3 triads. So the 9 numbers are...
You don't want to mess with the triads. Those
they
guys
will mess you up.
They will mess you
not
up.
Go well.
Yeah.
That's messed up. Okay, so there's the 9 pointed shape, and then if you draw a line all the way around, it's a circle. So usually you see it looking like a circle. And the 3 triads are the heart triad, the head triad, and the gut triad. So two.
Huh.
Yeah, what do you think that lines up
Where
with?
did we hear? Where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
Episode 1.
Which
Isn't that a song
tripartite
by
soul.
Alanis Morissette? Head,
Episode
heart, and
1
gut.
is-
Head, heart, and gut.
Yeah. Also, will episode 1 roll off this time or with AJ's or with Graham's?
Oh,
next
that's a
episode?
great question.
Oh, I don't know.
We don't know.
Anyway,
We'll figure that
we're about
out.
to lose episode 1, y'all, because we can only have 100 episodes up at a time. So go back and download episode 1 if you want it.
Whoa.
This has been a bummer. Okay, so
But do you think that? I mean, we're sort of hinting at it, but do you think it is a tripartite soul type thing?
100%.
That there's
Yeah.
the head, the heart, and then the appetites.
Yes,
or the,
my snarky comment
instincts?
about the Enneagram being based in the thoughts of Evagrius was meant just as like I show that I've done some research on this thing, but I do think that a thing I appreciate about this tool is that it ties personality again to motivation, and there's a twisting of motivation, which the 3 of us would call sin, but everyone would acknowledge as like brokenness or just like some problem with the world. But that does change how we act. Like our motivation being twisted toward serving ourselves does change how we act. So yes, so I guess I'll get to this in a little bit, but Evagrius had 8 deadly thoughts, and there are 9 sins that are identified with the Enneagram as the tendencies of each of the different types. So they are.
So the person who tends towards a number has a corresponding sin that they tend towards?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and this might lead to some back and forth because this will contradict the thoughts of Gregory the Great that there's a progression to these sins. So
Hope he's not listening.
I know, awkward. So the thought here is that each of the different types is tempted toward a different sin. And this, I don't think I went through this list in the presentation because this is almost always how the Enneagram is presented. You're this one type. This is the thing you struggle with, and it's bad. So don't do this.
So you think that's too simplistic?
I think it's too simplistic, but I think it also misses the fact. I just think there's plenty of condemnation already. Like what people were like really engaged by in the presentation were like the good parts that each of the different 9 types have, because I don't think that's talked about as much, but I guess we'll get through all these. Okay, so what are the sins that are associated with each of these types? Let's do that. So
Could you list the type and then we try to guess the sin?
Oh, sure. So
Like
quiz
tell
show,
us
quiz
again
show.
about the type because I
Okay.
think it'd be beneficial because I still don't have those things memorized.
That's fine.
So I was like, tell us the type and then we'll figure it out.
Okay, number 1 is the reformer. They are the rational, idealistic type, principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic.
Pride.
No.
Greed.
No. Number 1, the 1's tendency is toward anger. So the 1 wants the world to be a certain way, and when it's not that way, they are not happy about that.
Okay.
And it's
Okay.
just funny, in talking, like,
Rough.
1s will often not identify their emotion as anger. They'll describe it as some sense of, like, righteous justice.
Gotcha.
But it will...
Or dissatisfaction.
dissatisfaction, but it will read as anger to
Okay.
those around them. Okay, so the 2. The 2 is the caring interpersonal type, demonstrative, generous, people-pleasing, and possessive.
This one's greed. Possessive. People please.
People pleaser.
I think 3 is vainglory, so I'm saving that one.
And this one sounds like vainglory. They want approval from others, but maybe lust?
Waiting for that guess. Okay, so give me your final answers.
Lust.
And Graham just shrugged his shoulders. The 2's tendency is toward pride. So the 2...
This game's too hard.
Well, y'all wanted to play it. I didn't talk about this. Don't get on my
I'm
case.
having a great time.
I'm glad to hear it.
I'm not competitive.
So I guess we'll get into this later, but the 2 is oriented externally, and they are oriented toward so they're in the heart triad, so oriented toward emotion, and they have an external point of reference. So when that external emotion. It's all about them making other people feel happy, and when they do or don't feel happy, that reflects on them. So either they're awesome for doing that, or they suck because they didn't do it. So it's pride. It's all those things reflect back on them. Okay. Number 3.
So 3 is the achiever, right?
3 is the achiever, the success-oriented, pragmatic type, adaptive, excelling, driven, and image-conscious.
So this sounds like it's vainglory, wanting praise from other people. But I don't know if vainglory is one of the sins on there.
I'm going to say envy.
So the word I have on here is deceit. I guess I would put that closer to vainglory.
You.
So
put it on the board.
A quarter of a point to Graham. So y'all are crushing it. So the 3 will put on whatever mask is necessary to.
The wins don't have to be pretty, maybe.
A quarter of a point to 0 is looking great right now. But we'll do whatever they need to appeal to others, to get they'll change themselves to get that approval from other people. So they, again, part of the heart triad, but it's not an external point of, I don't know. They want to please people, I guess it's the easiest way. I'm just leave it at that. Otherwise I start rambling. 4 is the individualist, the sensitive withdrawn type, expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental.
You said pride was the last one though, right?
Pride was number 2. Pride was the second. Yeah.
Sadness.
It's funny that sadness is not included as one of
Melancholy.
Acedia.
I think Acedia is number 9 though.
I don't know, guys. I don't want to ruin this for you.
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay. Envy for the 4. So the 4 is oriented toward the past and a part of the heart triad. So emotions looking toward the past. You'll often hear about 4s who kind of look back and see how things could have been or wish they could have been.
4 is a heart triad?
4 is in the heart triad.
Oh, okay.
So 2, 3, 4 is heart. 5, 6, 7 is head. 8, 9, 1 is gut. So envy, yes.
Okay.
So they see how other people live and anyway, they see that other people's lives are easier. So that's the envy of the 4.
Number 5 is
the investigator, the intense cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated.
So what do we got left? We got gluttony, we got lust, we got...
Actually, do you want me to list?
There's 9 of them,
options?
yeah.
Yeah, so lust, sloth, fear, gluttony, greed.
I think 5 is fear, because you want to know everything. And if you don't know things, you're scared.
5 is greed.
Oh,
5s
woof.
acquire things.
This game sucks.
Yeah. Again,
You guys, we are crushing this.
Anyway, the 5 is greed. They are head-oriented, and they are withdrawing. And so instead of giving things to the world, they hoard things up for themselves. So they learn and learn and learn, but don't want to contribute any of that to the world.
Like Saruman in the tower.
Saruman in the tower.
With his Palantir.
Tell me more.
That thing, the Palantir, isn't that the thing that you can use to see things?
You look through the little globe.
You look through the little globe,
okay.
which is why the company Palantir, which is a data security intelligence company, that name is terrifying.
Isn't that creepy? Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Well, that's because Peter Thiel knows what he's doing, I guess.
Good for him. Okay, so the 6 is the loyalist, the committed, security-oriented type, engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious.
So is this one fear?
I don't know. AJ, what do you think?
I'm going to say fear.
It is fear.
Yay.
Gentlemen, we are 1 1/4 to
ding.
1 is currently our score, so crushing it. So yes, fear. So 6s are in the head triad and focused externally. So they think about, just get stuck in their head of all the things that could go wrong. They see all those things happening around them. So that leads to a fear of how things could happen. 7 is the enthusiast, the busy, fun-loving type, spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered. So your choices left are lust,
Right, greed, lust,
gluttony, and
envy.
sloth.
I'm going to go lust.
I'm going to say lust as well.
All right, it is gluttony.
Oh,
so
that makes sense
Gosh,
too. But
dang it.
So the 7 will see things and just go after them. So whatever they want, they just do it. They just go after it. And so and the 7 also will focus only on positive emotions. And so at any threat of negativity, sadness, whatever, they will mask that.
Just go eat some ice cream.
Go into the next thing, exactly. Or I don't know, starting a new business or dating a new person or name your thing. They just kind of leave the negative and then go toward whatever the
You gotta leave the negative.
Positive is,
You just gotta leave it.
What's the problem here?
Yeah,
I don't
who
see
wants to
any
be
issues.
negative?
because you only have access to half of your emotional range. And whatever that
Yeah, but it's the good half.
no, but what's that Moby Dick quote about like the eagle flies higher if it goes through the valley?
I will find
Okay,
it.
good.
It's worth reading.
Yeah, anyway, so I think that's the problem with the 7 is that there's a shallowness to life if you only experience the upper half.
But my Instagram feed is huge.
Oh, good for you. This is so. Yeah, and I don't want to spoil my type if we're actually going to have people email us, but there is a value to sadness that the 7 just kind of like naturally misses out on. Okay, the 8 is the challenger, the powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. Your 2 options left are lust and sloth.
I think lust.
My only way to win this is to say sloth.
It is lust. So well done, Graham, at 2 1/4 versus 1 point. Okay, so the 8 pushes through, accomplishes what they put their mind to. That's what makes them a challenger. They move against people, so they're part of the aggressive.
It's kind of disturbing that their sin is lust. It sounds like kind of I don't know, like.
But it's they want something and they get it.
I know that's kind of like dark and sad.
As are, I guess, all the types,
Yeah.
but and all of them have kind of this misunderstood side, which we for sure will not have time to get into today. Okay, that leaves us with 9, which is the peacemaker, the easygoing, self-effacing type, receptive, reassuring, agreeable, and complacent. Which the sin that is associated with that is
Acedia.
is sloth. So the 9 is in the gut triad, but they are asleep to that gut. They are asleep to that anger or like motivation to do action. And so in desiring to help everyone around them, sometimes it's easier just to like remove themselves, like to be away from themselves to avoid any conflict. So that's the 9, sloth. They just kind of disappear. Okay, so what was I trying to get at earlier? Each of these 9 types are also split into one of 3 triads. The 2s, 3s, and 4s are in the heart triad. 5s, 6s, and 7s are in the head triad, and 8s, 9s, and 1s are in the gut triad. A piece of what the triad tells us is how those different types see and interpret the world. So 2s, 3s, and 4s primarily understand the world through emotions. They see the emotions of others. They see their own emotions. That's how, if you were to tell them a story, that's what they would focus on in the story, are the emotions, how they think people feel, how that impacts others. That's how they see the world. What I am arguing for at this point is that this is an individual difference that is amoral. That
This is not a good thing or bad thing.
not good or bad. This is just this type happens to see the world this way.
You could prefer it or not, but
And that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but it's not a bad. So people that see the world through emotions, if you or someone's like, oh man, I don't do that, and I find that to be distasteful.
Yeah. So so the next triad is 5, 6, and 7s. I only moved to that one to say I can't talk about this without referencing my type. So I am in the head triad, and so what does that mean? The head triad is working primarily through the mind, through what we would call being rational, whatever. I mean, I would call it rational, but people who are in the other triads would call theirs rational also. But I approach the world through thought, through thinking a thing through, not primarily through emotions or actions. So I think of this often when when you watch a YouTube video and you hear about someone being irrational. Someone else is focused on emotions. I'm focused on
not on
logic.
YouTube.
This is awkward. Always on YouTube. But I think both
Irrational?
of those are individual differences. One is not necessarily better than the other. But emotions need a rational component, but a mind also needs a heart to accompany it. And both of them require gut. Both of them require action, that third triad of 8s, 9s, and 1s. So they are.
So is there a part of the Enneagram that is to like balance or encapsulate or somehow like control or tame all 9 of these things? Or is it more, no, you are a...
No, yeah. The purpose of the Enneagram is not solely to type yourself. The Enneagram isn't, well, whatever. It's all about you, but it's not all about you. So typing is an important step, but typing is mostly to show you your blind spots. It's not as an excuse toward because I'm a 4, I can be as dramatic as I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
As a 5, it's okay that I withdraw from other people.
Or because I'm a 7, I can be all flighty and
I can jump
and focus on my fun stuff.
Exactly.
all the time.
Of course I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm a 7, you guys.
Right. And so you can be descriptive and say, yeah, I'm tempted toward this, but you should phrase it that way because it's not, those are not good things. So the Enneagram is, so what helped me is that I would never have thought of myself as having a tendency toward greed, which is the sin of the 5. But then in doing study and understanding myself as a 5, I see it now. I see that I buy book after book after book, and I don't actually read them, but it feels good to have collected those things that I've been given collectibles by family members, and I don't really want to get rid of them. I want to hold them. I want to hold on to them and not use them, but just to have them.
Hey, you gave me some of your coffee today, Meg.
There you go. So I'm trying to be somewhat giving with that. So there are problems identified with each type, but there are certain, again, amoral differences. Part of that would be how we see the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is helpful to understand how you primarily see the world so that you can augment that with the other triads. That if you're only focused on the emotions of others, but you don't think through the consequences of responding, that is a lesser reaction than if you brought in both your head and your mind, or I'm sorry, your head and your heart. Same with it, you can have a great emotional response. You can accurately analyze a situation and then not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a weaker response than if you brought in all 3. All I'm saying here, there's nothing really new here compared to tripartite or tripartite?
Tripartite.
Tight. There's no difference here between.
Don't ask me. I don't know how to spell things.
Thank you. That's so good.
As we all know.
Nightmare. Oh man. So there's no difference between what the Enneagram is saying, what the tripartite soul would say, that you probably have one of those 3 that's primary in you, but you need all 3 of them to be a complete person. So there's an agreement between those 2 things. You want to read that quote? Is that what you pulled up?
No, I was agreeing with you that like I'm firmly in the head triad, and my deficiency in heart is obvious.
Yes.
Like it's for me, it's a problem.
Yes.
When other people are feeling things, I don't feel them.
Yeah.
And I want to approach perhaps like relational and emotional situations in a head way. And so when I have like parents who are feeling a really, really heavy emotion and they come, I want to solve the problem and address their arguments and deal with it that way. When in reality, what I should do is say like, I hear you, and I see that you're having trouble at home, and let me express some support for you and support you emotionally. It's like a real deficiency that I deal with in life.
And there are tools that will help us adapt to those things. So I, as a 5, tend to be doing repressed, but I have, I went through years of like being really into GTD, getting things done, have a really solid system for how I track things that need to be done and make sure the right stuff is in front of me all the time. Like I have a system that has accommodated my weakness.
Did you use Evernote for your GTD?
I used Evernote for a long time. I forget the name of it. I think it's the Secret Weapon Manifesto, which sounds horrible, but it's sorry. Yeah. Anyway, it's about
makes you sound like a Bond villain.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What kind of internet site did you find that on?
Louise.
Like the Anarchist Cookbook.
Yeah. My wife used to, when she was living in New York, live next to the Anarchist bookstore up there, and so anyway,
I have some Anarchist books.
Yeah, see,
did I tell you guys about this?
No,
they're on your shelf.
I used to. Have.
Were you an anarchist?
No, I worked at a coffee shop right next to the train tracks, and we used to get the anarchist train riders all the time through, and it's like a nomadic people of America that don't really have any missionary to them because they move around all the time and they never stay in one place long enough to establish community and sort of church relationships. And so I wanted, when I had dreadlocks down on my waist, I wanted to be a missionary to them and ride trains in the summer, but
that'd be cool.
I didn't. Okay. And now I minister to a completely different people group.
Yeah, that's true. Never too late to grow out your dreads again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is. It's hot down here. It's so hot.
That's a good point. Okay. So what's point number 1? Point number 1, 3 different ways of seeing the world, primarily through emotions, primarily through like thought, and primarily through action. Okay. That's thought 1. Thought 2, tied in with those 3 triads, is that there are twistings. There are negative sides of all of those triads. So someone, a 2, 3, or 4, has the potential to struggle with some form of shame. So because they're so focused on emotions, they can see how those emotions impact them, leading them to shame. Someone in the head triad, thinking a lot inside of their head, can develop fear. So sometimes you'll hear the head triad called the fear triad. And same with the gut triad. So the gut triad is oriented toward action, but sometimes it is hard to accomplish your goal if you're only focused on your own action. So sometimes you'll hear the gut triad called the anger triad. So each of those three amoral differences have a negative downside. I don't know if I'd call it shame, fear, and anger. Anger clearly would fall under a sin category, but I'm just trying to see if there's a difference between like...
Fear does.
Yeah. Fear's like a lack of faith. Yeah, it's fair. Okay, so then we'll put these as actually immoral. Is that right?
But those aren't things that we necessarily do. It's just
Correct.
This is the possible downfall of your personality type.
Yeah. So there's a risk. There's a threat of falling into shame.
Or
fear,
see it
anger.
as it's like a signal. Like if someone is consistently fearful or consistently angry or consistently ashamed, then if you can see that in your own behavior, then that can sort of lead you into this and say like, okay, well, there's bright spot. There's like. You found you found something that is true. Now we can build off of that and talk more about the reciprocals that can maybe bring some health in life.
Yes. I guess I struggle with the shame triad of calling that out specifically, but I think
But there are some people that just don't struggle, feeling shame is not a thing that happens a lot.
Yeah. Or I think that is true. I also, I think there's great wisdom to, not all sadness is sin, but there is a category of it that is. And so being open to that possibility, I think, is helpful. But you should not jump in and say, oh, you're sad, you need to repent immediately. Okay, so amoral difference of how they see the world. There's a twisting of each of those, which leads to kind of a sin tendency that is more likely for those different types. There's another way of looking at the 9 types and grouping them, and those are based on stances. So stances are whether a person moves. So the 3 stances are dependent, aggressive, and withdrawing. And what those 3 mean is that there's a type of person that moves toward others when they're under stress. There's a type of person that moves against others when they're in stress. And there's a type that moves away from others when they're under stress.
There's I can't remember the poet. But there's this line that I have in my complex book, but I can't remember who said it. And it's like, some men wither, some men fester, and some men explode.
Yeah.
That kind of idea.
Exact same idea. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Oh, that's
a good one.
I like the way it put. That's a good concrete.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. That was some poet said it.
It's real good.
Yeah,
I like
it.
it.
Graham, I'm going to write that.
Was
in
it
my
wither,
place.
fester,
Some men wither, some men fester, some men explode.
So does that correspond exactly to yours?
Let's
some
try
men
it.
move
Well, the
against.
wither is the withdraw.
Withdraw.
The fester is the
That's toward though.
yeah.
But explode would be against for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's try it as we go through. So the types that move toward others are called the dependent types, or the dependent numbers. Those are 1s, 2s, and 6s. They have an external reference point. We reference that a few times.
I feel like that would be more fester because it's like you're living with it. It's always with you. And then against is that's the two. Or no, I don't know.
Dependent.
We'd
I
have
like
to
that.
Exploded against and then withers, withdraw.
Especially for 1s and 6s.
Anyway.
I could definitely see that. So that would be, did you say fester? I think that would be closer.
We'd have to
that one.
workshop it.
No, but I like it though. So this type tends to be thinking repressed. And what that means is that these types will think a lot. It's not that they don't think, it's that it's not productive thinking. We'll get to this with the withdrawing type, but like as a 5, I plan on doing action. Like I think about action a lot. I just don't do a whole lot. So I'm doing repressed, which we'll get to eventually. So these 1s, 2s, and 6s, they have an external reference point, which is, again, I would say is an amoral difference, that you kind of do want people to be thinking of others. Like that's not a bad thing to be considerate of others. They tend to be oriented toward the present. So they either see what needs to be done in the moment or what is wrong with the moment, but they are oriented toward the present, which again, I would offer as an amoral difference, that we do need, like there are changes that need to be made today. There are things that are wrong today that need to be focused on. So I want to push back on that. Okay. So next is the withdrawing type. So those are the ones that move away, which I think wither would fall under this one. They 4s, 5s, and 9s are doing repressed. And maybe I guess I'd say the repression on each of these is a problem. That is a thing that needs to be dealt with. So that's not an amoral difference. But having an internal reference point is not necessarily a wrong thing. Like someone being introspective is a good thing. We want some level of introspection for our students, for ourselves, for our coworkers. So doing repressed, 4s, 5s, and 9s might look like they're very active, but usually they're not doing what actually needs to be done. There's a very funny story of a 5 who I'm friends with who during a holiday was supposed to be, I think, packing so they could take some sort of vacation. And instead of doing the packing, he sharpened every knife in his house. Now, to him, felt very important, but didn't actually need to happen, especially not at that moment, days before they were leaving for, I don't know where they were going. That's a very typical 5 thing.
Well, when you get home, are you going to want dull knives or sharp knives?
Again, you're speaking,
I'm going to want sharp
you're
knives.
speaking my language.
let's
Instead of
put things in the right places. Let's say this is
in the weeks leading up to my wife delivering our child, I instead of packing up the things we needed for the hospital bag or getting the car seat in the car or anything that's actually important, I was selling my childhood collectibles. That is what consumed my time because it felt so important to happen, to clear out clutter before we had the kid. It wasn't important. Anyway, here we are. Okay.
I wish I knew that was happening. I could have bought some Magby memorabilia.
That's terrifying, and actually I'm glad I didn't sell it to you all now. Okay, good. The 4s, 5s, and 9s, the withdrawing, tend to be oriented toward the past. And again, I would offer that as just a difference. It is good to be thoughtful of the past, to remember where we came from, lessons we've learned, whatever that quote is of those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. There's a value to having the past in mind. So those are the withdrawing types. And then 3s, 7s, and 8s are in the aggressive stance. They move against others, and that's the... What was the other one? Is the one that it sounds like explosion, but isn't.
There's fester. There's fester. There's
move
explode.
against
There's
explode.
wither.
Explode.
Explode?
Yeah, explode.
Yeah, explode. So I'd say explode for aggressive.
What are you trying to say, Magby? Are you trying to say that these
very
types are...
aggressive, Yeah. So these, the 7, which AJ... I think you are... Don't you think you're a 7?
I have been told I'm a 7.
But see, that's...
Whoa,
not
whoa!
helpful.
We're ruining the
haven't-
game.
What?
We're ruining.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't
the
listening.
I think I've made it pretty
The
clear what I
user
am. I think we've
experience.
talked about it before, right?
I know.
I'm sorry, my bad. I guess, yeah, loyal listeners will actually already know.
Tell me if I'm
all of
wrong.
this. Okay, no. I don't think I can know if you're wrong. Okay, the 3s, 7s, and 8s are aggressive. They want to reshape the world. They are feeling repressed. And so...
Accurate.
And again, with the 7, it's that they lack the range of feeling. And the same with an 8. The 8 has this... They're either passionate or they're not passionate. It looks like emotion, but it's not the full range of human emotion. And so there's kind of an
It's like a
emptiness there.
pantomime.
It's sort of like one note.
Yeah, one note. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And same with the 7. It's either super happy or I guess 7s can't anyway. 7s, when they fall out of that super happiness, it can be really hard sometimes for them. I know that's something that's written about. Okay, so 3, 7s, and 8s, they move against others. They want to reshape the world. They are oriented toward the future. Oriented toward the fun thing they'll do in the future, toward reshaping the future, toward being away from this present moment. And again, there's a value in looking toward the future, planning for the future, having some vision for how things could be, motivating others with that. There's value in orientation toward the future. But when it's separated and not paired with the past and present, it is lesser. So again, I'd say it's amoral, but still inferior to having a combination of all 3. But I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard for a person to do all 3 of them well. Mm-hmm. So typically, you should have 3 people, right? You should have different types of people working together to make sure you cover all these different.
Like
bases.
a 5, a 7, and a 9. I mean, it just works.
This
we
is
have
why
no heart, so 2 head and a gut. So
Who needs heart in a podcast?
okay,
Well, I mean, this is why we have so many people on our thesis deliberation team, right? Because
yes,
I am deficient in certain areas.
Yes.
And this is shown up like my exact problems. When there is an intro that aims at emotion and I don't feel it, I'm like, they failed. And
Right.
everyone else in the room says it landed with them. And I'm
Yeah.
like, apparently I just don't. Like we
Feel.
have a word for it. We call it hand and bot. And when I'm not feeling things, and it's like I would have, if it was up to me, said you have done a poor job with this portion.
Yes.
But it has reached let's say 80% of its listeners,
Right.
and so
People are crying.
Yeah.
people are crying and feeling feelings, and I'm feeling nothing and thinking it's cheesy. And it's the problem is reflecting on me, not the writer.
right. But that's not only so. I, as a withdrawing type, my tendency is going to be if anyone does anything aggressive, I want to leave that situation. I don't want to engage in that situation. And so for someone to make an aggressive comment makes me feel threatened in some way because I want to get away from it. But again, if someone else is willing to meet that aggression, it doesn't bother them in the same way. So
Yeah, I feel like it's strong and controversial, and that's fine. That's what a kid should be doing on
And-
stage,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why there is no unbiased viewing of any thesis, of any presentation we give, of anything. There's no unbiased viewing of any of those things. We have a lens through which we view all of those things. And there are some that we like more than others, some that are more resonant or just closer to our personality. So, okay. So just to get closer to landing. So we've gone through the 3 triads. So the 3 ways of interpreting the world. We've gone through the 3 stances of like what you do under stress, of whether you move toward, against, or away from others. We talked a while ago about the sin tendency of those 9 numbers, which can be helpful in understanding which of those 9 maybe you see in yourself.
What was mine again? 7?
7 is fear. Nope. 7 is gluttony. So 7 is just want to consume a lot. Again, it's not gluttony in the literal go eat food, though it could be that. It's the gluttony of experience.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah,
that's me.
Yeah, wanting to soak up the world. Yeah. And so, again, the Enneagram very often is used to talk about all the bad stuff, which is useful. Like, you need to know your blind spots. You need to know your weaknesses. But I don't think you achieve any form of greatness by only not doing bad stuff. You get there by doing good stuff, by doing great stuff. Mm-hmm. And so each of these 9 types has some sort of excellence tied to it. You'll sometimes see these called attributes of God, or like of the divine, or whatever, depending on how woo-woo of a source you're looking at. But there is a source of greatness that is pointed to by each of these 9, and I think I'll go through these and then wrap up. So the one who we talked about is oriented toward action, and as an external point of reference for that action, does show us that there is the possibility of perfection, that there is actually a possibility of the world being better than it is now. And they're capable of bringing some piece of that into the world, of making the world a better place than when they got here.
Because they have the characteristic of a God is the vision that God is the perfect creator, or that he's made a good creation, or he is in fact perfect.
Yeah.
And so if we have a reflection, or if we have an internal sort of understanding of perfection, then that is the thing that number ones. That's the thing that number ones can offer or point to.
Yeah.
Is it is not too late to seek a better world.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, at every point.
Another poet, not me.
No, that was still good.
Tennyson.
Why?
You gotta quit telling us. You'd have all
yeah.
our listeners would be like, that Graham.
I can see that.
Poet and scholar.
The 2s, again, they are externally oriented in the heart triad, so emotion felt toward others. They show us the compassion of God. They show us that it is actually better to care for others, to be aware of the needs of others, to help, to want to be aware and sensitive to those needs. The 3s show us the harmony of God, that God does not desire a conflict among his people. There's this self-giving nature of 3s where they're changing who they are to meet what the other person wants. And that's loving when you phrase it that way. It's not manipulative. It's the 3 wants to give that to the other person. And so they want to create a harmony between them, in the same way that God desires a harmony with us. God desires that none should perish, that all should be with him. Mm-hmm. 4s, I shared this talk with a few friends, and so I'll try and incorporate some of their opinions. What I said originally is that 4s are very comfortable with melancholy. They're very comfortable with sadness, and they don't need that sadness to be fixed right away. They're comfortable sitting in that sadness. And so part of what they point to is that we should be sad for, in the Christian worldview, that we have a divine origin. That divine origin has been broken. We've been there's a twisting of it because of the fall, and we should be sad that we live in a fallen world and not in the perfected Eden that we could have been a part of. So there is a sadness there. But then there's also the side of it that the 4 is okay sitting in that sadness with a person. Think of the story of Job, that the only guy what's the guy's name, who just sits there for 7 days instead of actually saying anything.
The last guy, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, that God is with us in those dark, sad moments, and he's not just trying to make us happy to get out of it, but he's with us in the sorrow. That's what a 4 shows us. The 5 shows us the omniscience of God, that God does in fact know everything, that we are capable of knowing much more than we do right now. We're capable of growing in that characteristic of knowing. The 6 what I said at the talk is that the 6 who is aware of things externally and thinking about them all the time sees all the problems around them, and they're capable of preparing for that. And in the same way, like they're capable of becoming, in a sense, I use the word dangerous, but I mean that in the sense of like they're ready for anything. Like if you've planned for everything, you have all the skills, and no matter what happens, you're ready for that moment. There's a safety in that.
It's like a Boy Scout.
Yeah. There's a strength in that.
Or like one of those wacky survivalists.
Right. Or I think of the person who sits next to me who used to be a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
Like if any medical problem happens, he is going to be prepared for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because he's planned and practiced it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we see? We see strength, we see safety. Some will point to and say faith, because you can see these problems and trust them to God. But I'm going to go with strength and safety. The 7 is, shows us the freedom of God, that God is not constrained to have to do anything, that God can do as God wants. In the same way that the 7 has this like this freedom, this lightness, this fun about them, that they can.
One could even say charm.
Just like incredible, just like perfection. Just no,
probably good looking.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But
just this affable nature.
But the 7 is
really friendly.
People
and
want to be
loyal.
Around 7s. That's
true.
The running joke in whatever. If you listen to people talk about 7s, that 7s are the only type that are happy to find out that they are a 7. They're the only type that's happy to find out who they are. Every other type is
like, that's not me.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, I don't want to be that.
Yeah, I like being a 7.
Exactly. Yeah, 7 just sounds like really fun. Unlike 5s, anyway. So they show us that freedom, that if things aren't good, they can kind of move on to the like. It's good that they don't get bogged down. Like that seems like a healthy thing to do. The 8s show us that God is truth. That when they fight and push through and accomplish something that no one else thought was possible, they were right. That thing ought to have existed in the world, and they made that thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the 9 shows us self-emptying love.
It's true.
They show us selflessness, and again, willing to give what other people. It's like Nine's superpower is the ability to see from all of the different perspectives, the 8 perspectives, and then kind of like match that, like do for the other person what they need.
And my self-emptying love.
That's exactly. Thank you. Good. Y'all are wonderful. Okay, so those are the 9 types. Just again, this has been reiterated. The Paideia portion is that there are objective things that should be taught as right and wrong. The virtues should be taught as right. The vices should be taught as wrong. There's no, I'm a courageous person. All of us are supposed to be courageous. There's no, I'm a prudent person. We're all supposed to be prudent. But there are differences of what are, there are individual differences of whether we see emotionally with our head or through actions, of whether we're oriented toward moving toward people, moving against people, moving away from people. There are individual differences there that shouldn't be taught as right and wrong necessarily. There are right and wrong ways of using them, but those differences are not right and wrong in and of themselves. So Paideia is to, what does the title get at? The Paideia is to show that there are things that are objective, and then Enneagram is to say there are parts that are subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I got, boys.
That's good. So, I mean, like, just maybe last little thing, what would you think is like the practical, helpful thing to do for someone to do that listens to this and they're like, oh my goodness, there's a lot here. It seems psychologically deep. Like, it seems like there's a lot of truth to this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, is it just to like read all about the types? I mean,
yeah, again, so for me, it's to read about
like knowledge,
the types,
experience. Like, do you live this? Do you learn this? Like, how do you?
No, I think this is a thing to start noticing in yourself and start noticing in others. It has been very helpful for me to understand the different motivations of the 9 types, to see, someone who's doing something I wouldn't do isn't being a mean or bad person.
Gotcha.
They're just seeking after something else. And so I think the Enneagram is most helpful in learning compassion for your child, for your friend, for your spouse, understanding that they're not coming from a place of trying to like tear you down.
Ignorance or immaturity.
Yeah, it's not that. It's that they're in the same way you have a motivation that's just kind of different from other people. Mm-hmm. So do they. Mm-hmm. So I think the most helpful kind of just first thing to start with is to notice triads, is to notice, are you talking with someone who is focused on emotions, someone who's focused on head knowledge, or someone who's focused on action?
Gotcha.
And then typically you'll want to match whatever way that they're talking.
Interesting.
That's especially good for teachers and counselors.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
It's like a good mental model just to have in your head to try to not filter, but to frame behavior.
Yeah, exactly. I think, triad is probably the easiest one, and then also orientation to time. So being aware of whether who you're talking to is talking about present, past, future, and then matching what they're talking about.
Gotcha. Because if you have a kid that is not future oriented and you keep talking about like, well, you're going to have to learn this for college,
Right.
and they're like,
They won't care.
they won't care.
Yeah, but if you can pull it to the present and say you're going to lose your car if you don't do whatever, then that is much more powerful for them.
Gotcha.
right.
Cool.
Cool. Well, this has been episode 100. Boys, we did it. We're going to go and treat ourselves to a celebratory ice cream, as we should always do at the end of a large something or other.
Truth.
Just made that up.
Okay.
So you can check us out on our website at classicalstuff.net. You can email us at classicalstuff@veritasacademy.net. You can tweet at us, CLSSCAL stuff. That's our spot. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear if there are any Centenary members out there, right? Yeah. It's folks who've listened to all 100. We'd love to get to know you. Tell us about yourself. We'll reply if we can. And sometimes that's tricky because we all three have the email address. Yeah. So I don't, somebody will, anyway.
I don't think, have I sent a reply from that email before?
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know if I ever have. I'll
That's
get
fine.
better one day.
Anyway, we love that you guys listen. We are happy to have you listeners. We would probably still do this anyway, even if no one was listening. But it makes it a lot more fun when we know people are on the other end of this. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Fui fui.
Bye.
Fui.
Bye.